I'm 5 News anchor Erika Thomas here with Arkansas Governor-elect Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Thank you so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time.
So before we dive right in, I would love for viewers to get to know you a little bit better. If you could complete this sentence for me. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is?
A bold conservative reformer.
I like that.
And really fun to be around too. Let's not leave out the good stuff too.
Sure. So let's talk about the historical moment that will be happening next week. What does it mean for you to be elected the first female governor in the state where you grew up?
It's certainly very humbling, and there's a great sense of responsibility. Very excited about making history, both as the first female governor of the state of Arkansas, as well as the youngest governor in the country. But my hope is that I'm not making history for me, but we're making history for what we accomplished together for the state of Arkansas. We have so much opportunity in front of us to bring about transformational change and I think make a generational impact. And that's why I ran for office, and I think it's what we're going to be able to deliver over the course of hopefully the next 8 years.
I know that's looking forward, but I'd love to take a step back in history as well. Obviously, you're following in your father's footsteps. What kind of weight does that carry for you?
My dad is the best governor that Arkansas has ever seen. I like to think he's the best governor our country's ever seen. So he has set the bar and the expectations very high. So I have big shoes to fill, but there's nobody that is more hopeful and more encouraging that I'll take those two titles away from him of being Arkansas's best governor and one of the country's best governors.
Obviously, you come from a politically involved family. You have a lot of political experience. You haven't held elected office, though. Do you feel like that will hinder you in any way?
I don't. I think it brings about a fresh perspective, and we have a new generation of leadership stepping in, not just to the governor's mansion, but across, frankly, the state legislature. And I think that perspective, that innovation, that energy is going to help us be really successful in this first session.
I know you come from Washington, D.C., where you have a lot of experience under President Trump and his administration. What lessons learned in D.C. do you plan to bring here to Little Rock with you, and what will you not do?
I spent 2 years in D.C. in the Trump administration, and one of the things I think it did was probably give me a little bit of a thick skin, and so not focusing on what the critics say, but focusing on what we can accomplish for the people we're serving. That will be probably the greatest takeaway that I could have from my time and my experience there. At the end of the day, the reason I ran for governor is very simple. I absolutely love Arkansas. This is home for me. This is where I grew up. This is where my kids were born. This is where my husband and I have chosen to raise our family. And I want my kids to love Arkansas the same way that I do. And I want the same opportunities that I had to be the ones that they get to enjoy. But I think if we don't start doing something about it, if we don't fight for those opportunities and make sure we are empowering every Arkansan to live a life where they can be successful, and it doesn't matter where they start, they get to decide where they will finish. We have to go out and focus on priorities that allow and empower each Arkansan, and that's what I'm going to do as governor.
I want to talk about those priorities, but first, you mentioned your critics. What message would you have for the critics of you out there, including those who didn't vote for you in November, and how do you plan to reach across the aisle?
I want to focus on things that empower every Arkansan. I think one of the greatest equalizers is making sure that every student in the state has access to a good quality education. There's nothing and no one that should be against making sure our students have that access to a good education so that they can be on a pathway to prosperity. That I've made no secret that education reform is my #1 priority going into this session, and I'm hopeful that people who maybe haven't always supported me can support the ideas and the policies that are going to help lift every Arkansan up and that are going to benefit every person in the state.
Do you consider that the priority #1 and what you want to accomplish in that first kind of pivotal 100 days?
Certainly at the top of the list, but I'm somebody who sets high expectations, so I don't just have one thing on the list. I absolutely am critically focused on making sure we bring education reform to the state. It's why I've talked about it so much on the campaign trail, but I also think we have to focus on things like public safety, making sure the communities where our kids are growing up are safe. Has to be a huge focus and one of the biggest priorities that we have, not just in this session, but as a state and certainly as governor of the state. We also need to focus on things like phasing out our state income tax, rewarding hard work instead of penalizing it at the hands of the government, building Arkansas's outdoor economy. We're the natural state for a reason. We need to go out and tell our story and make sure people understand just how great Arkansas is and all of the amazing things that we have to offer.
It is beautiful. And I'm not from Arkansas, so it's nice to be here and to enjoy.
That's all right. We'll take you in anyway, Erika.
I love it.
And if you need an Arkansas tour guide, I can help you out. I've been to every county in the state, most of them about a dozen times, and happy to tell you all the best places to eat, to visit, and stop all over the state of Arkansas.
I love that. You referenced the state income tax. What is your plan? How do you plan to accomplish that? Obviously, that's a lot of revenue to lose if you can get that down to zero. So how do you make up for that?
Well, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be something we can snap our fingers and see happen. We have to responsibly focus on doing that, continually chip away. And it's not going to be any one thing that allows us to do it, but it's going to be a collection of things, focusing on modernizing government, making it more efficient, and then passing that savings on to the taxpayer. I think if we really focus on education and building that skilled, qualified workforce, we're going to grow our economy. And again, that allows us to then chip away at that income tax. So making sure we're doing things over time that help us do that is going to be a big focus and certainly a priority for my administration.
Do you have a date in mind by when you'd like to get to that 0%?
I think that the most important thing is that we do it responsibly. We've seen other states try to rush out and do it before they were ready, and it turned out to be a huge disaster. I think our focus is less on the timeline and making sure that we get the job done and that we get it done responsibly.
And stepping down over time. Okay. I know you mentioned education, and that's a big issue for you. You've been working hard on filling your cabinet, bringing in people from other states, right, with background in Florida and Arizona. How do you hope that those people will help you reach your goals here in Arkansas?
You know, our goal was to go out and make sure that we recruit the best people possible to fill roles across the administration. I'm extremely proud of the fact that the vast majority of both my staff in the governor's office as well as the cabinet are from here in Arkansas. But I think it is amazing that we've been able to recruit top talent from across the country that are excited about the opportunities that exist in Arkansas, that there are people who want to come here and help us achieve those goals. And we are, I think, have so much energy and enthusiasm from the team that we have built that we're going to have a really successful, not only session in the first 100 days, but very successful 8 years.
I know you kind of referenced some of these throughout the conversation, but in what areas do you feel like Arkansas needs to improve the most, and how do you plan to accomplish that? Because Arkansas has some room to grow, I think, in some areas, right?
I think it's by far the place that we have the most opportunity and where we should be leaning into is on education. That's why I've made it my top priority for this session, focusing on the Arkansas Learns Initiative and making sure that we are empowering families, empowering parents to make the best decisions possible for their students, and actually helping deliver good quality education to every student in the state of Arkansas.
Obviously, we're coming out of a pandemic. We've had a pretty crazy 3 years. What do you think, what lessons learned from that, especially when it comes to education, do you think can be applied to the future in terms of the ability to offer students different ways to learn?
I think one of the big pieces that we learned from that, and one of the reasons it's one of the priorities listed in my Arkansas Learns Initiative, is networking. Making sure that every student has access to broadband capability is really important, because we saw what a disadvantaged students that didn't have that connectivity were at from other students who did. So making sure that whether they're at home or in the classroom, they have the ability to learn and get the resources that they need to continue to learn and continue that process. I think that's one of the things that we certainly learned through the pandemic.
There's also been quite a few controversial topics that have come up in Arkansas, like gender-affirming care, the trial that just wrapped up last month that we're waiting a judgment on, Arkansas's trigger law banning most abortions. How do you feel about those specific topics?
You know, I'm unapologetically pro-life. I'm proud of the fact that Arkansas is one of the most pro-life states in the country and intend to keep it that way. When it comes to some of the other legislation that you mentioned, I think going back to what I said before, one of the most important roles that we have is protecting our citizens. There's nothing more important than protecting the kids, the most vulnerable, and those who have no ability to protect themselves. So anytime I have an opportunity to help protect kids through legislation, we're going to look at that and continue to try to focus on how we best protect the kids of our state.
I know that you're going to have some familiar faces at the state capitol. Obviously, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin is going to be Attorney General, and Attorney General Leslie Rutledge is going to be the Lieutenant Governor. What's your working relationship like with them, and how do you plan to work together to move the state forward?
You know, I think we're going to have a great partnership, not just with the constitutional officers, but also with our federal delegation, be able to work closely with them to deliver for the people of Arkansas. I'm very excited as well about the partnership that we will have with members of the state legislature. I think we have a great person in Senator Hester as well as Speaker Shepherd to really work together, be collaborative, and deliver on some of the big priorities that I've laid out.
You've talked about children and education multiple times. What would be your message for young girls who are watching your accomplishments? You have a daughter yourself. What is your message for that next generation?
I think one of the most important pieces of advice that my dad ever gave me, and certainly applies now as to anything I've ever done, is be the person that God created you to be, and you can never go wrong if you focus on that. And so I think one of the great things that people can look at is it doesn't matter where you start. You can do anything that you want to do here in the state of Arkansas, and we want to make sure that that's possible for every kid growing up in the state.
Do you have any fears going into this? This is a big job, a big role.
The expectations are high, and I hope and feel confident that we will be able to meet those expectations. I am more excited than anything about the opportunity that is in front of us. I think we're not only going to make history as the first female to be governor, but also make history about the things that we're able to deliver for the people of Arkansas.
Well, thank you so much, Governor-elect, and congratulations. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.